They were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not but be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. So go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before. Don't know about you, Craig, but hundreds of episodes of that intro and that song still never gets old.
It really doesn't. I enjoy it a great deal.
It's a belter, yeah, and so great. So I'm really enjoying that. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast. I'm John Anderson. I am in charge tonight, replacing the host that is normally here, Cammy Black, or normally the boss. Would we call him the boss, Craig? Would that be fair?
Moderator, someone who keeps us ragtag bunch of idiots under control.
I spent quite a while referring to him as the divine leader, so I'm not entirely sure.
No, I'm quite happy with divine leader. It fits in with the whole cult thing.
I'm okay with that. Of course. Anyway, welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast. I hope we're going to have quite a few joining us. We've got a fairly interesting show tonight. We've got a wee bit of a review of the season gone by, Glasgow and Edinburgh's respective fortunes. We're going to cover some of the news that's popped out this week as well, because peak Scottish Rugby, Craig. We thought we'll have a quiet one. We'll just do a wee review of the season. We'll wind down. We'll get our speedos on, and we'll head off on our holidays.
Right.
And Scottish Rugby likes to do what Scottish Rugby does.
Yeah, it decides to dump all of its news in one go, virtually. So to give us a bit of interesting chat, and hopefully tonight I'm not going to be talking to myself for a little bit of time while you go off and shout at the neighbours or answer the door for your pizza.
I mean, there's every possibility you'll end up having to do a monologue, Craig. So I think you just need to embrace this. It's part of the experience. So just get ready, because it may happen, right? Anyway, tonight's show, as I've alluded to, we will review the URC JZ Championship. the respective fortunes of Glasgow and Edinburgh. However, we are only going to give you a taster, a small piece of that review, because obviously we have a Patreon channel. And we will be doing quite a lot of that behind the Patreon, because guess what? Some of us may want to swear about that season review. So if you head over to Scottish Rugby at patreon.com/Scottish Rugby podcast, you can pay £3 a month. You can get yourself exclusive content, including our Hands on the Ruck section, which is our sweary business, where we set the world to rights every single week. I think it's absolutely worthwhile, but you will, if you choose to stay on Council Telly tonight, you will get plenty of content, so do not worry your pretty little socks, you will be just fine. We will have guests joining us through the night, I believe. I think some of the stragglers who kid on they play rugby may join us, but we will see. That may happen in due course. Shall we start with the news, Craig?
Yes, fire away.
Where would you like to start? Would you like to start at Edinburgh? Let's start at Edinburgh.
Well, we may as well start where all the good news is coming from. Mind you, you've got some good news this week. I think the main two is Callum McRae's left the building, is returning. He's leaving the coaching team and is leaving to return to Benetton, where he played for a long time, and he's taken up a very, very similar role, but quoting family, to help spend more time with his family. I don't know whether that means he's what we're all kind of thinking is that he's heading off because his family are from Italy and they feel more settled over there. If they are, I might be completely wrong, but they obviously seem to be more settled over there, so he's decided to go back. So it's going to be a loss.
It's a huge loss, actually, given that Edinburgh's defence in particular this season has saw a real step up. So I saw a lot of fans on Twitter particularly saying, it's a massive loss, and there's a lot you can, and it kind of touches on something we've talked about this in the podcast before, that all these guys are human beings, right? And ultimately, we always have every time someone doesn't sign a contract or does sign a contract elsewhere, you hear why didn't the SRU just sign them? And fans are very good at that. And yes, I am criticising Scottish Rugby fans. It is 8 minutes into the podcast. Here we are. Straight off the bat. We are going for it tonight. Let's do this. Let's start as we mean to go on. Fans do criticise the SRU a lot for, why didn't you just sign him? And it's like, well, actually, he's taken up a similar position at a team that generally Benetton, can be considered a lesser team than Edinburgh. So clearly there's something else at play there, and it's not about professional development. It is clearly, as they've said, about family circumstance, and sometimes you just can't mitigate for that. So
absolutely,
we need to be a wee bit more aware that there is human beings involved in all this, and sometimes humans make interesting decisions. So, other piece of news from Edinburgh is that Glenn Young has signed. What type of contract has he signed, Craig? Is it?
It looks like it's just.
Is it?
It's they haven't mentioned it as such in most of the press releases, but Mike Blair is quoted saying that he's going to be staying with us for next year. So, I would, from what we can tell, it's a year extension at the moment, extending his stay with us. But as he's been named in the Scotland squad. That's hopefully he's going to be heading out to at least Chile. Then you might find that hopefully we'll keep him, and he's performed incredibly well for us since he signed from Newcastle. So no, actually it was Harlequins he came from, but he was with Newcastle before that. So fingers crossed we can keep him. Although he's 27, so he's rattling on in age. He's not exactly a young. Listen to me, the old boy.
he's coming into his prime, Craig, is what I think we call that.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
He's got another 10 years before he reaches his true prime, though, as we would well attest. So no, it's great. I think he's one of the performers, and it's that balancing act that the pro clubs have to do, where we've got obviously Super 6 players coming through, but also they've got to balance out Scottish internationals versus guys that are going to be available the vast majority of the season. Barring, obviously Glenn Young's going on a Scotland tour this summer, and that's amazing for him, and I'm really, really pleased for him. Ultimately, he's quite far down the pecking order, so it's unlikely he's going to be away for a Six Nations or an Autumn International or a World Cup. But that's not to say he doesn't hit the ground running this season and absolutely push himself into contention. But, the gamble is there that he should be available most of the season. He's a very, very solid player. So great signing. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if I remember correctly now, I don't know I think it was the Blue, Cardiff, I think you were playing against. He did outrun their fullback and one of their wingers to score a try. It might have been Brief, actually. But it was.
If it was Cardiff, it wasn't Dan Fish, was it? Because, I think you could outrun him, Craig.
I'm saying no more. Craig, I'm saying no more. I don't know what to think about that comment.
I would take it as a compliment from your best bud. Yeah, so really positive news from over the road. Obviously, losing Cal McRae's not as great, but I'm sure you'll find Mike Blair will have his contacts, and I'm sure you'll be bringing in the next great defence coach. Or have you replaced him?
No, not yet. So we'll wait and see what happens. I think there's more pressing coaching issues along the road. So I think the SRU have got their hands full at that moment in time.
Are you suggesting that the SRU are equitably treating both teams and prioritising the resources accordingly?
I'm saying that they're looking across both teams and thinking, well, Edinburgh are in a pretty good position at the moment. Maybe we need to sort out the coaching team. And from what I can tell in the news, it looks like they have sorted it out, even though they haven't announced everyone, because it seems very, very interesting what's just happened today.
Yeah, so the news coming out across my side of the M8 is that Pete Horne has been recalled from his 6-month exile at Ayrshire Bulls.
The chosen one.
Glasgow Warriors as the chosen one has returned. The prodigal son is back with us after a 6-month secondment to the Ayrshire Bulls. Pete is back with the Warriors. Looking forward to getting tore in about his coaching career now. He was at pains to note in his press conference how long he had actually been coaching for. Reminding people that it wasn't just the 6 months. He had been coaching a lot towards the end of his playing career as well. So it's great to see Pete back, and obviously you know him very well, Craig. So,
well, I don't know him as well, George, but he's as everybody knows, and we've talked about this for a long, long time. He's an incredibly knowledgeable player, one of the more knowledgeable players on the circuit, what happened with Ayr and his results with Ayr really shouldn't be looked upon as his coaching qualifications. I think he has been coaching with GHA, I think it was, for some time, and he knows his stuff. So coming in as skills coach for Glasgow, I think is a very interesting appointment, and it also means that they must have someone in place, or they know, or someone has agreed verbally that they're coming in, because they wouldn't replace a coach without putting someone in who may then just clear out all the coaches and puts other people in.
Well, yes. And let's call that the land of sanity, where coaches can come in and everything is as it's meant to be.
Yes.
There's no, for me, there's no doubt that should be how things have transpired. They may have a verbal agreement from someone, they're just not releasing it yet, and that would be great. What it could be is that they've said to all the candidates for the Glasgow job, you're not replacing any of your assistant coaches, it's you and you alone. And in you come. And by the way, we've hired Pete Horne as well, because he's really good.
Well, that may be the way, John, but any coach worth their salt is going to say, well, no
to that. Yeah.
Because if you want me to take this team that's after my rant last week, I have to say is not in the doldrums as such. They've had a bad run of games, but they're not in the doldrums. I think if you're going to take that team from here to there, you need autonomy. If I was a lead coach or director of rugby, I'd be saying I want autonomy on who I bring in and what we do.
Let me just throw two names at you then, Craig. Well, actually, I'll throw three or four names actually, but let's go with
here we go.
Two that you will know very clearly. So you're talking about autonomy. Richard Cockrell came into the Edinburgh job, and who was his attack coach, and who continued to be his attack coach?
Yeah, I understand that.
Duncan Hodge, correct.
Yeah.
Did any coaches shift under Cockrell for that first period? No, they absolutely did not.
I understand that.
Dave Rennie done the exact same when he came into Glasgow. Dave Rennie is not a coach of, we could describe Dave Rennie as many things, but headstrong, we would not necessarily, that is fair. And he kept the same coaches. So I agree with you. I think any coach worth their salt should be putting their foot down and saying, yeah, I'm bringing in my own staff, I'm bringing on my own team, and absolutely not, we're not doing this, SRU.
Yeah.
But let's see what happens. But I hope that they've got a preferred candidate in mind, and that's been signed off, and Pete Horne is going to get a fair shot at the whip and isn't going to find himself replacing an interim coach after 6 months.
The reason I comment the way I'm commenting is the fact that I'd see the point if they'd. Well, that is very dependent on the contract that Pete Horne is on, but I certainly wouldn't have thought they would have replaced that coach or brought Pete Horne in on a new contract without having the new head coach or lead coach knowing about it. At this point, I'd see the point if it was 6 months ago or a year ago, and he signed a contract and said, "Look, go away with the air because we need you to go down the air, but you're actually a Glasgow Warriors skill coach and you're going to come back to it." But that's not how they've announced it, so it's It's very dependent. We'll have to see what happens.
So we've had a comment from Sue tonight. Any idea what Greg Laidlaw is doing next? His contract was up with the Shining Arcs. I would imagine that whatever Greg Laidlaw is doing next, it does not involve doing the roadworks at the M8, frankly. Because the guy, so it's a fair shout, right? But ultimately, you're talking about a guy who has had a very, very long and, at times good professional career. But there's no indication that Greg Laidlaw wants to be or has any inclination to be a coach whatsoever.
Yeah, he's got a very successful. He's a partnership and very successful management company, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
So but then on the other side of things, if he pops his head up and becomes a defensive coach for Edinburgh, I don't think you'd see me complaining.
Craig, honestly, if that happens, that first week where that happens, I'm going to be insufferable.
What do you mean you're going to be insufferable?
Okay, I'm going to be more insufferable. That's going to be like, there's just going to be about an hour of me posting videos of Greg Laidlaw missing tackles. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to enjoy it.
That's true. Well, I won't.
Yeah, but do you know what? That being rubbish at defence doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad defence coach.
No, that's
as
true.
Ronan O'Gara has proven.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, it's exciting to see Pete back at Scotstoun, and I just worry. It's a knee-jerk reaction. I don't want to be this guy again, but I worry that we're just doing it because that's what the fans want. And yes, we sacked Danny Wilson because that's what the fans want. But also, let's be honest, we sacked Danny Wilson because the results were stinking. We hired Al Kellogg as MD because that's what the fans wanted. We've we've now brought back Pete Horn. I hope it isn't because that's what the fans wanted. Pete Murchie's there because the fans thought that was good as well. There just seems to be a wee bit of a pattern here. So let's see. Results.
Is Pete Murchie going to be announced as the new coach? That's the question.
Oh, dear God above. Hopefully not. Can you imagine? There'll be 15s everywhere just going, ugh, great.
Well, after the weekend, I think there's a lot of people not wanting Lancaster anymore. So we'll wait and see.
Well, exactly. Yeah, all of Ireland are done with him now. So
oh well, maybe then you might get him then if he stops going down. If the Irish don't want him.
I loved the rumour mill going into overdrive when Leinster announced their new assistant coach. Andrew Goodman was announced by Leinster, and the rumour mill went into absolute chaos. And it was like, no, he's replacing Felipe Contepomi. And actually, Lancaster's listed as a senior coach, so he's not an assistant coach. So, actually what we're saying...
No, what are you saying?
I was just busy. Actually, what we're saying is Lancaster runs the show, and Leo Cullen's the figurehead there. Yeah,
he's the director of rugby, really, isn't he? Leo Cullen, and Lancaster's the head coach.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see.
Okay, final piece of news. Well, second final piece of news, because we've got one more. I'm not even calling it news, actually, Craig. We've got one more agenda item before we go into rip Glasgow and celebrate Edinburgh. For finishing 7th in the table when we finished 8th. Rob Harley's new destination has been announced, unsurprisingly, to those who know the scholar of Le Français himself. Rob Harley is taking his Ginger Barnett and he is off to Cascaron in the Pro Do, and will be signing a 2-year contract with them to play in yellow and black. And I can just say, from the pictures, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. His complexion, he is not a yellow. He put it this way, he couldn't sign for Wasps, right? He's definitely like there's, I think, like a Toulon sort of like gig, like a black and red. I can see like Toulouse maybe. Yellow and black is not his jam.
Well, he's just fitting in perfectly to a Pro D2 eye gouging, ear biting side. With his penalty record, he's just going to fit in perfectly well. But what I did love so much, funnily enough, I didn't realise that Ginger Bob was English. I thought he was a Scotsman. So it was interesting when they announced it with a wee what's the word? The wee English flag in the bottom corner there.
I feel that maybe some marketing executive in France has just simply looked at Rob's wiki page and went, born and crew. Oh, yes, that's the l'Angleterre, c'est super, l'anglais, and popped it in there. And they've not really considered that he is big, ginger, and Scottish. But
to be honest, they have got it right if he's born in crew, so
Yeah.
He was born in crew, you see, so there we go.
Eligibility criteria here, bro. Like, we're going down a sticky route. This top's going to get more of an outing than I realised tonight if we keep going this route. So Rob the Englishman is away to Cascaron and he's signing a 2-year deal. He is only 32, lest we forget, which is not a massively old age for back rows. Admittedly, back rows who've maybe grown a wee bit of a dad bod recently, he probably, will split his time between 6 and 4. But I think, great opportunity for him to go and explore a new culture. We've seen lots of older players go down to France and actually really enjoy it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he'll top up his pension.
Well, I think he was holding out for Tim Swinson's berth at Saracens, but he never got it. So,
of course, that's another piece of news. Yes, Tim Swinson, the eternal retirement man, has retired again. Let's see if this one lasts more than 2 days before some cash cow suitor comes tearing it up. We gave him a bloody eulogy. We gave him absolute. Timbo, you were great. Oh, lest we forget. Oh, there we go. Eyes off the Saris of all the. Yeah.
41 caps for them as well. You know, I would have thought he would have stayed on to see if he could get 50, but
exactly.
he's done very well down there.
I'm sure you get a house and car at 50. Allegedly. So, right, final piece of news, Craig, and I will come to you for this, given your position as resident podcast women's rugby specialist.
Well, until I can be replaced by a proper
by an actual women's rugby expert, yes, absolutely. We could do with that, but not that I'm pushing you out the door, but you know. Scottish Rugby have announced their support package for the women's professional game. That's a loose term. The women's rugby team, with a view to moving into the World Cup year. They have announced that they're going to up their support to approximately 500,000, which for 34 players, 35 players?
It's, where now, if you'll excuse me reading here, it's 36 players.
36 players.
Ahead of the Rugby World Cup, yes.
Yes. Now, the concept behind this is that the players will be supported with expenses such as, missing work to go, and I think there's an 11-week period that they're going to try and get the squad together completely, and that £500,000 will be used to support the girls in that. That works out approximately £13,888 per player if you split it equally. Which it won't be split equally because we know that there's players who are on quite significant money at really good jobs and stuff. So 11 weeks of their wages will be quite high. However, let's address the elephant in the room. We've both had had some jibes on Twitter from folks, Craig, about not necessarily jumping behind the unprecedented level of support that the women's game have got. It's easy to be unprecedented when the support they've had previously is rubbish.
Yes, and let me start by saying it's great that the SRU have finally announced something, and that they have upped their funding up until the Rugby World Cup, and then they're saying that they're going to then look at it and go further. For me, and I've said this on Twitter as well. I want to be happy about it, and I want to tell everyone what a fantastic thing this is, and it's great. But the problem I have is that it seems to be Emperor's new clothes. They're saying that the funding model continues the approach currently in place. So basically, what they're saying is, we're not going to make these players professional.
No.
We're not going to give them a living wage so that they can spend all their time on rugby and nothing but rugby. We're going to, we're going to support them in every different way that they need to be supported. Now, yes, that's fabulous. They're going to support the players with more money, etc. That's great. But it's nowhere near where we should be. And we are now at this situation again where we are asking our players to play at a professional level, but not be professional and not pay them, even if they paid them £30,000 a year as a professional athlete, nowhere near the men's game, and nowhere near what other professional athletes can get. And I just feel, why should we be expecting our male rugby players that play for Scotland to not have to think about getting a job in not have to think about anything else other than rugby, and perform to the highest level, And what we're going to, actually, what we're going to do with the women is that they still have to have another job to supplant the income that they're to supplant the time that they're away from work. It's absolute for me, and I understand what other people have said on Twitter about, they're disappointed that we might not be celebrating this as much as we want. I don't think there's a huge amount to celebrate.
No, I agree.
And it's, let's give them the choice. I don't mind if you turn around and say to someone who's a vet or a doctor, we want to pay you this. If you want to become a professional rugby player for the next 6 years, we're going to pay you this amount of money for the year. If they want to give up put on being a doctor on hold and go and play rugby like the men, like Jamie Roberts has done, he's studied and he's become a doctor, but he's still a professional rugby player first, and then when he retires, he'll then go on and be a doctor. If they want to do that, that's great, and that's because it's not a matter of supporting them to be to make sure that they're at 11 camps or 11 weeks worth of camps. We want them to be continually working on their skills and their physicality and their athleticism over the every day of the week with a couple of breaks. That's what you want them to do. And I just find it absolutely crazy that we're behind the curve again. And then I'm supposed to sit here and celebrate that we're still behind the curve.
Exactly, yeah. No, so we've got some stats here from Katrina here. Compare it to England, who pay a salary cap of 120,000 per team in the what is the Premiership 15s in 20. Although, yeah, as you say, the salary cap for men is 5 million. It's it's back down to about 5 million as well, but obviously they've still got marquee players. I think it really does speak to, you either want your players to be professional or you don't, and there's enough money there. Whether people always make the argument, where's the money coming from? Well, the money is coming from the fact we've got a men's game, right? We do have a men's game at the moment that is making money. There is a surplus in the SRU accounts. We have had the opportunity to invest in this. We have chosen, to Craig's great ire, to invest elsewhere. We've chosen to put investments into Bayonne in France. We've chosen to put investments into Old Glory in the US. We have spent significant amounts of money on London Scottish. Have had money. We've put a lot of money into the men's game over the years, and ultimately the money you're talking about, you're saying 500,000 for a year to the women's game. That is as big a slap in the face as you could possibly have. When you think about, for example, Hugh Jones, when he left Glasgow, was rumoured to be on £300,000 a year. Stuart Hogg, when he left Glasgow, was on you go.
Sorry, what were you going to say, John? Well, the thing is, if you look at it, it's... We're fighting today, mate. On you go.
We are. I was simply going to say, I was going to make some more examples. Stuart Hogg was approximately on 400,000. Alex Dunbar, when he retired, when he moved to Newcastle prior to retirement, he was supposed to be on approximately 250 to 300,000 pounds. If we can afford to have players paid that in the men's game, we can afford to support the women's game. And you know what? It might mean that players in Scotland don't necessarily get paid as much as they believe they should. But there's a whole open market there. And, I'm all for our talent. If they think they want more money, go abroad. Go and get flogged like Finn Russell. Accept the consequences of that. But we need to be making money for women's players to be made professional, because there's no way we are going to be competitive. Look at England. If we're not a professional side, we are going to continually be talking about 60-point defeats as being, that's progress.
Well, it's
a joke.
If you break it down, you were just talking about, you broke it down to approximately £13,000 per individual within the 36 there. Well, that's what they're doing with Italy. Yeah. And Italy have come, now. So have we decided that that we're happy to be funding to the same level as Italy, even though we're a tier 1 country. It's and then on the other side of things, we have to look at, it's not, they've not turned around and found £500,000 down the back of the couch. It's they are investing in some more money to take it up to £500,000. So whether if it was £450,000 last week, they've just chucked an extra 50k in. I'm not saying that's exactly what it is, and I don't think it is, because they haven't gone into it. But I just feel it's a roundabout way of them announcing something to make us think they're announcing something, just to get people off their backs. And it just seems, it just seems, as I say, emperor's new clothes for me.
It's really designed as it's an 11-week down payment on a training camp that we are putting into a World Cup, and it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic to think that we can, in 11 weeks, if we just pay our players relatively okay for 11 weeks and make sure their bosses aren't calling them in to come and do the work, come into their vet surgery, come in and be the doctors and lawyers and all the highly paid professions that we know these girls do. It's like, if we just give them a wee bit of money for that and we get them in for 11 weeks, their performances will be slightly better than they would be if we didn't. And, it's minimal money, minimal investment, and then we can forget about it because they're not going to qualify for the World Cup again because we're not going to invest in it. So let's just forget about it for a while. And then this whole women's rugby thing will die away and we can just, we can get back to the real sport of, making sure Glasgow and Edinburgh are funded. And, well, actually, we don't actually care about that either. Let's just make sure Scotland have got the players they need and that we've got a sell-out Murrayfield, because that's really all we care about.
It's just, as I say,
that sounds really harsh, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is that also you've got to look at students and the people and the women that are playing rugby and aren't earning the sort of money that the doctors and the vets are earning and the lawyers are earning.
Yep.
And does that mean that they're getting 30k and the doctors and the vets are getting $2,500 to supplant their time that they're off? Or what, Why can't they just turn around and say, we're going to make you a professional rugby player, you make your choices, the students that are coming through can still study, but they're going to be a professional rugby player first, and they can study, they can study if they want. And as I say, I've said before, the vets, the doctors, the lawyers, well, they can decide, well, if you want to be a professional rugby player for the next 6 years, then you're going to get paid that amount of money. You put your career on hold, and then when you finish up with rugby, you then move on. That's what the men do, and I don't understand why they can't have the same standards.
Are you suggesting that a professional rugby player could also be a student, Craig? Are you suggesting that that's a possibility? I mean, University of Glasgow seem to think so, but
Well, for some reason, only the male side of things can be a student at Glasgow University.
Funny that. So no, I mean, it's, for me, I know people are saying, right, like, it's a positive step, but do you know what? It's a pathetic step. It's a lip service step, and I really, really think, like, we've talked so much in this podcast about the potential we have. Funnily enough, 51.7% of Scotland is not male. And see, if you give them the opportunity to watch people who they may then aspire to be or, support, could relate to, perhaps, in a professional environment that is competitive. And, you grew up watching players, Craig, who you watched Scotland players and you thought, bloody hell, I want to be that player. I want to, and unfortunately Schumann came along a lot later for you. So, it's hard for you now because you've found your true calling.
That's true. But, as Schumann's lucky, I am. It's true.
It's true. But, it would be so good for young girls growing up just now to actually have players to look at. And, I've heard stories about, it's still the case where women's teams are not allowed to play in first team pitch because that's the men's pitch. And, this is still the case across the country. It is pathetic. This is a game, we claim this is a game for everyone, but all we're really saying is it's a game for everyone with a dick. That's all
Well,
we've ever really said.
I think this year has been a more positive year, and I've seen a lot of social media activity of club dinners with the women's teams celebrating and being presented their awards with the senior men, etc. And there's a lot of teams out there that treat their women's team as part of the senior squad, and I think that's to be celebrated. And I think we as Scotland were one of the most open-minded countries in the world, one of the most liberal countries in the world. It just, why can't, we would never ever go into, well, it has been for a long time, but nowadays we'd never go into a job and say, right, this doctor, because he's male, is getting paid this amount of money.
Yep.
And this doctor, because she's female, is getting paid this amount of money. We are an equal society, or we're becoming more and more of an equal society. And I just think our sports stars should be treated the same way. As I say, I don't want to push it off as something negative, because I really do feel that we're starting the ball rolling. But unfortunately, the ball has started rolling about 5 years ago, and it's still just crawling. It should be up and running fully now. And I'm just disappointed with this announcement.
No, and that's fair. I think no one's saying it's not a positive step in terms of things moving forward. It just isn't the step that we wanted and the step we've been calling for as well. And, we've talked in the podcast about the cost of, X amount of professional contracts for women at, the rate that England players get paid, which is approximately 30,000. We're talking about money that I'm not going to say so. There's priorities in rugby. There's priorities for both pro clubs. There's priorities for club rugby as well. Club rugby does desperately need funding.
Mm-hmm.
But club rugby also needs, and you're in a situation where you're almost at that point. I think I talked about this previously, that you're almost at this point where we've got a real opportunity to, right, think about the men's game, right? The chance of Scotland being world number one in the men's game, pretty non-existent given where we're at. Two pro clubs we're so behind the curve. We've done we do actually punch above our weight a lot.
Yeah.
The opportunity for us in the women's game, the possibility of, if we invest now, yes, England are a mile ahead of us. Yes, New Zealand are a mile ahead of us. France are a mile ahead of us. But they're a mile ahead of us because they've paid money and they've started to build that culture. We're not as far behind these countries, despite the results and despite the way it looks. We wouldn't be as far behind these countries because we've not had 100 years of history.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we are so far behind New Zealand, we're so far behind those other countries. It's an opportunity that the SRU are not embracing, and they're blind to it.
My final words on it are basically, it's like us going to the Rugby World Cup with a Super Six side.
Aye, it is. Yeah.
And it's just not good enough.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yes and no, Craig. It was a step down from that. It's not even a Super Six side. It's a West 3 side, because we've not actually got any professionals in there, and actually everyone's a lawyer or a doctor, and they've not actually came to training on Tuesday because they couldn't get time off work, and then we went to the World Cup. So, and that's not to doubt the commitment of anyone involved.
Oh God, and that's what I was just about to say. Look, I am not doubting commitment. I'm not doubting skills. I'm not doubting how good these players are. That's absolutely not what I'm trying to say. I just feel that the governing body need to invest far more into the Scotland women's team.
Are creating a situation where they've got their hands tied behind their back, their legs are bound, and they've got no chance of competing here. And until we get professional players, because that's what we were calling for, SRU, if you're having to watch this, That's what we're asking for. These are not professional players. This is a subsidy. This is the equivalent of giving a PhD student a bursary. Stop it and make them professional. Make them an offer to be professional. If they choose to go and continue to be a vet, that's fine. There will be players who want to be professional rugby players. Let that happen. It's an absolute joke. And we're now at 45 minutes, Craig. So I think we've got 15 minutes to tease, titillate, if you will, the listeners into, I know, oh, mama. We can tease and titillate into our users, our listeners wanting to be part of our Patreon gang, patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. But will we do 15 minutes of kind of just light-hearted talking about Glasgow and Edinburgh seasons? Obviously, both seasons are now over.
Mm-hmm.
We both crashed and burned at the quarterfinal stage. Now, I know you guys are used to that, so that mustn't be a surprise for you.
Guffaw.
Sorry, it's a legacy from the old Cockerel era. I think I'm feeling a wee bit of trauma because people are saying Glasgow need a Cockerel type. It's like, yeah, someone that's going to fail. Someone that's going to fail at every final they ever get into. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to rattle on about Edinburgh, and then we can finish with Glasgow, or do you want to start with the negative and finish with the positivity?
Do you know what? Well, let's start with the negatives and then we'll go into the positivity. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one for me because as we've talked about previously, both sides finished within a couple of points of each other.
Yeah.
And we've got 2 South African finalists, which I love, by the way. I actually have just won a bid on a Stormers top. Hey!
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I was very pleased. It's one of these ones that I don't think the URC has necessarily been that good a change, but I like the dynamic and I like the fact that Leinster aren't winning. So from a Glasgow perspective, like the competition's never been higher, and actually Glasgow's performance has never been lower. Well, it has been lower. That's a very bad statement to make, but in recent years it hasn't been much lower. And the frustration for me for the season gone by was all like we've had so many conversations, Craig, as the years gone by of, yeah, what you moaning about? You've won, or what you moaning about? You're in this position or that position, and it's like, well, yes, let's see how it shakes out because I know where this goes. Like, there's a predictability of where this goes. There was a couple of really bad losses for Glasgow on the road in particular, but ultimately, it seems weird to most fans that you're judging a season on not necessarily results. Like, I think results needed to be better, and actually, it was telling when the results were poor, generally under Townsend or Rennie or even Sean Lanini. If results were poor, but there was performance there was enough there for you to go, do you know what? Yeah, I can go back next week and I know where we're going. And it's, Cammie's talked about this so many times in the podcast. It's about understanding what is the process the guys are going through, what is the decision making, and where are they trying to go with this?
Mm.
And that's a high performing environment. And I had no idea for 2 years where Glasgow were trying to go. I actually still don't have any idea where Glasgow are trying to go, but maybe once we've got a head coach and an MD who actually has a qualification, then, we'll have a chance of that.
It's a difficult one. I think Glasgow are at a point now. They reached the peaks of winning the Pro 14 and getting to a final again with Dave Rennie. I think where the issue, obviously, Dan Wilson maybe wasn't the best person to be put in charge. Almost someone who's there to kind of continue the SRU sort of vein of this is how we play, how we move forward. Whereas Dave Rennie at least came in and played exciting rugby and made the most of the players that he had in place. He may not have treated them as well as we've talked about before, but I think he made the most of the players he had. I think where Danny Wilson's fallen down is he's in Glasgow have fallen down and maybe are finishing the season in far more negative way than Edinburgh are, even though we're at a fairly similar level in the URC, is the fact that they've got very good signings that aren't performing.
Yeah.
And they also have, deadwood's the wrong word, but they have a lot of players that it's time for them to move on.
Guys who've reached the end of the line.
Well, I'm sure if they go somewhere else, like, for example, Tim Swinson, and they go somewhere else and they get, a new fire in their belly for another team, now that's fantastic. And I'm not calling for people to be sacked. I'm just saying that there are players within, and there's a good number of players within the Glasgow squad that, to be perfectly honest, if I performed like they did against Leinster in my job, I would have been fired. And so you've got to think, is what are they actually doing it for? Are they doing it for a paycheck, or are they doing it for the Warriors badge, which all of the Warriors fans expect them to be doing?
Yeah, and I think we're not unrealistic to expect that. There is players that play professional rugby. We're not going to beat that jingoistic drum of like professional rugby players should do it for the love of their city and their love of their club, because it's a national game now, and that's fine. But there is an element of excluding, like, whether it's Glasgow, Edinburgh, Scotland, Connacht, Leinster, whoever, there's an element of you've got a professional responsibility to yourself. You've got a professional, and the guys you're talking about, and I know we've talked about some of the players you're talking about, Craig, but ultimately we're not talking about first or second year professionals. We're talking about experienced campaigners who are not going to be on small money, because the very nature of the beast is you don't necessarily stay in the SRU and stay on the same money. These guys are not going to be, they're not going to be cheap.
No.
And there is a real, I understand the concept of, like, we need to keep experience in the team as well, and experience is invaluable. And actually, you saw that. I haven't said this example recently, actually, but actually you saw when it's very telling when Dave Rennie, for all his faults, he was a good rugby coach. He knew how to get results. He knew how to get a team playing well, and he's done that with Australia as well. And he's got himself in a position where he's a well-respected rugby coach. It was telling that he brought Cully in, and made him a captain. It was telling that he brought someone from outside the culture to kind of supplement and be part of that. And it was co-captain with Ryan Wilson, absolutely. But Cully was in charge, and Ryan Wilson's talked about this in podcasts as well. Like, as soon as Cully was told, you're co-captain with Wilson, Wilson was like, yeah, really, mate, you're captain. Yeah, I know my place here, because he drove the standards, he set the standards, and that tells you everything you need to know, that you're expecting a senior player like Ryan Wilson to set standards when he's already been told, you know what, no, you're not capable of that. There's been so much broken with Glasgow for so many years, and we've talked about recruitment, we've talked about culture, we've talked about, coaching, game plan, strategy, but ultimately it does come down to those players and that personal responsibility. And I think coaches, the responsibility lies on them to tell these players that they're no longer good enough. But because a player's never going to do that. An honest player, the old the honest player who looks in the mirror and all that, that's not really how professionalism works.
And it also, the whole honest player crap kind of comes along. Me as a player, for example, I had more doubts in my head that were more more problems with me as a person rather than me as a rugby player. And so I think we have to be fair to these guys. And Johnny always goes away, oh, they've got mothers and fathers, they've got but they are human beings, and people have off days. The problem we have is that and I think we mentioned it in Hands in the Ruck a couple of weeks ago, but you've got a captain there who is leading the team, who's supposed to be leading the team, and all he wants to do is get involved in fights and get involved in niggle. Now, people, we as a rugby nation and as rugby players, a lot of the whole men's side of things is, oh, we love the niggle. Now, a little bit of niggle's great, and it shows that these guys are doing something and are trying to. You're expecting them to give you commitment. The problem you have is that your captain should be the one that stands you back and says, "Whoa, that's enough now. We need to be concentrating on this." And unfortunately, the captain for Glasgow currently isn't, and it was proven not only in 3 or 4 games. And if you're continually going on and have, sorry, I'm about to run out of battery here on my laptop. But if you continue to get penalties against you for stupid things, then someone should be turning around to you and saying, "Whoa, you need to sort yourself out." So it is a really difficult situation, but I think Glasgow will weather it and they'll come through it on the other side.
I think there is enough quality in that team, and that's part of the frustration. A lot of the players that have been signed are, and a lot of the younger players are of a quality that they should be really, really competing at the top level. Now, I'm appreciating you plugging. Have you plugged your laptop in now?
I'm all sorted.
Good, because I wasn't wanting you to cut out midstream here, Craig. Because we're now going to move on to the other side of the M8. Your boys in the burnt orange and blue. 7th position in the table, quarterfinal defeat. Doesn't sound massive, but it's been a really positive season for you. So, 4 is yours.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that if you said to me at the beginning of the season, well, in fact, if you said to me when we found out that Cockers was going, that we'd be where we were, and would be really, really thankful for it, I'd be kind of questioning, because as Glasgow fans and Glasgow as a whole have shown that they're only below us by 1 position in the URC, and it's devastation. Whereas with Edinburgh, we're really up on our toes and really enjoying ourselves. Now, I think there's been many different reasons for that. I think Mike Blair has come in and given the whole team a different outlook, which has then fed into how they deal with the fans. We've had this brand new arena, whether it's a tent or whether it's a proper arena, that's up to you guys. But we've got a home now that we can go to. We've got just stupid little things like I feel like I'm always on the halfway line in the Lothian stand, standing in the terrace. It feels like my place. It feels like somewhere that I want to go to. We see the same faces. We have a chat with them. We have a laugh. We have a dig about the team that we're playing, or we have a dig about some of our players. The players come and talk to us. They seem to be really enjoying themselves at the moment, and it's just that whole. I'm not saying if we finish 12th that we'd still be all excited and happy-go-lucky, but I think the enthusiasm has bubbled over into our own lives with our team, and we've been in the doldrums for so long. We had a little bit of a false dawn, we started off with Cockers, and he came in and really gave the team a shake-up, and we thought, this is fabulous. He's going to do something with his team, and then he kind of fell back into his old Leicester Tigers ways of man mountains, smash, Hulk smash sort of thing, and we didn't use the backs that we had. So it's really been for us, me as an Edinburgh fan. I was quite. Although as we've talked about it, my season ticket has gone up mainly because my son's now no longer qualifies for a child ticket. But I found a way to pay it because I'm excited to be there next. I didn't want to lose my position. I was really, I didn't want to lose my seat. Well, I stand, but my position where I stand. So it's an exciting time for us, and what we now need to do next season is we need to dig in and we need to see what the Blair Kinghorn at 10, where that's going to take us. What Mike Blair's going to do with his checkbook? Are we going to see some new signings coming in? I think Goosen has been a great signing. We'll wait and see how that pans out. So quite exciting, and it's amazing that we're in 7th, you're in 8th, and we're so different.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
It is really telling, isn't it? And I think it is down to, and that this isn't a dig at Edinburgh at all.
No.
It is down to maybe the history of where we've been, and
it is, yeah, absolutely.
It's that frustration from Glasgow fans of having been in a final 3 years ago, and just the absolute, yes, the decline, because actually we are just behind you in the standings, but ultimately we're miles behind you in the park. And I've alluded to that throughout the year, that the way Glasgow are playing versus the way Edinburgh are playing, I kind of like the way Edinburgh play. I like what you do. I like the way you utilise your backs. I like the way you actually play rugby. Whereas we had the Danny Wilson grand plan of let's take forwards who are not strong enough to play a forward-based game, and let's run it through them till they get turned over, or we'll use the backs but on back foot. And then it comes down to magic from, world-class back talent that is there.
Yeah.
But it's like we're relying on individual brilliance. And actually, it reminds me a lot of Edinburgh under Cockerell, because you guys at times were relying on individual brilliance. Your forward pack was so dominant, but you were relying on, when the ball ever went out with that pack, you were relying on individual brilliance. And it's where guys like Blair Kinghorn really came into their own. He had the ability to really create and cut great lines from 15 at the time to get Edinburgh scores and to really push them forward, but it's not sustainable. And I think it's so weird, and I think I'm so glad this season's over in a lot of ways, and I'm so glad that the SRU have acted quickly, because I think we can rebuild now from a Glasgow perspective, and I think Edinburgh are building something really exciting. And what we've always wanted, and despite the foe rivalry that we've joked about for many, many months and many years, it's not really. We both want two pro clubs that are strong. We want both teams to be performing well. We want players to be, playing well at them, because ultimately we want a strong national team. We want to have a laugh, but we want to do it from a position that neither teams. It's great to have that excitement of both teams being quite good and being like, oh yeah, well, you're quite good and you'll beat them and we'll beat them, but actually, wait till 1872 time, that's going to be great. So I think the statement from the SRU really acknowledged that as well. Dodson was pretty clear that obviously with two pro clubs, we can't afford to be in a situation where we've got one team that are struggling. And you could probably argue that's been learned from Edinburgh, because they let them struggle for too long and rode the Glasgow coattails. So ultimately, I think we're in a bit of a reset phase, certainly over this side of things. And I think you guys, the only concern from me and you guys, it's that second season syndrome.
Yeah,
and we've seen it quite a few times across all manner of sports, but I think Mike Blair's too clever a coach that's going to be a problem. I think he's got a lot of plans up his sleeve, and I think you guys are going to go strength to strength. And I think with a good coach, we've got the potential over here to go with that as well. And hopefully next season will be really exciting.
I hope we, Mike Blair has a genuine Tooney vibe about him. In that,
yes,
and in that, I think he's got the ability to take Edinburgh to to a URC win. Now that we've got the South African teams in, there's more pressure, and there's more. You're going to have to do more. You're going to have to do more work. But I can see him going through that, taking us to a win, then becoming Scotland coach.
Yeah.
And then that I could see it happening. I'm not saying it's gonna, but I can see it happening. What we need to do is, and just as you've just mentioned this, we need to ensure that we've got two incredibly strong. We dropped the border. Cammy took a lot of heat online when he said we dropped the border reivers for that when he was talking about Glasgow's last game.
Yeah.
We did. What Wales are not allowing themselves to do, their governing body to do. We dropped a non-surviving pro team to circle the wagons and properly fund both of our pro teams. We need to be in a situation where they're both fighting for URC titles and they're pushing as hard as they possibly can. But then that's in the. I also want women's rugby funded properly. So, I want my cake and I want to eat it as well.
No, I think there's plenty of cake.
That's
to be honest, Craig, I think there's plenty of cake, and I think we should be splitting that cake a wee bit more equitably. But let's call it a day on the Council telly for tonight. It has been, obviously, we've given you plenty of content. What could you ask? What more could you ask for? Well, you could ask for another hour of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I did mean to interrupt because I actually interrupted you. But what I do want to do is make sure. I don't know if Billy, who is asking a couple of questions on our comments, is a Patreon or not. So I wanted to answer at least one of these questions.
Well, do you know what? Let's do that
before we head away.
Are Glasgow heading for a temporary coach before they get a quality appointment? You say yes, I say no.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do Glasgow need a new 10? Yes, 100%.
Well, I would say they need to utilise the 10s they've got.
I think we've tried.
Sorry, John.
I think we've tried to utilise the 10s we've got. I think one of them is substandard and always was substandard and was shipped off because he was substandard. I think one of them's been underutilised by the coach and one of them's been overplayed. So I think we have two competent 10s and I think we need one more.
Okay, there you go.
And Duncan Weir can go and do one. Right. So, yeah, sorry, Billy. Hopefully you're a Patreon, Billy, and you can come and join us. If not, patreon.com/Scottish Rugby podcast. Come and join us, £3 a month. But I will now try and figure out how to switch these off for the various streams that... because Cammy still hasn't told me which ones to switch off. Anyway, it is goodbye from me, goodbye from Craig. If you are coming over to join us on Premium Telly, Sky Sports, come and join us. Looking forward to more chat about the season review. Otherwise, as I said, goodbye. And it's a season goodbye. It is goodbye. We are done for the season. So
it's amazing.
I'm sorry.
It's been a long, interesting season, and it's been a really good season for spending time on the pod. And that's been a full year with the pod, so it's been interesting.
It is. Are you looking forward to resting your glutes for in the off season and just getting everything back into shape, and then get ready for pre-season when it comes?
Well, I started thinking about pre-season already, and I'm not looking forward to it. So, we'll wait and see.
Pre-season for us tends to be, can we get some beers and talk about a book, or can we do a Gladiators episode? So anyone that's got any ideas as to what pre-season for the Scottish Rugby podcast should look like, get it over to us. We're more than happy to try anything you put forward, except, well, that is a bold statement. So. Clearly, obviously that'll be taken on advisement. Nothing illegal, nothing silly. But we would try pretty much anything. So yeah, pre-season will be upon us in due course, but we're finished for the season. It's been an absolute pleasure having you along as well, Craig. For those freemium users who are with us, really glad to have you on board, and it's been a great fun sparring with you this year.
It's been great, yeah. Has been fantastic.
It's funny because people think we have this like. People are like, "Oh, you and Craig don't get on." It's like, no, we get on really, really well. Actually, we got on really well. It's just we don't give a fuck. And
we don't give a,
we don't give a fuck.
A Thai dish. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly. And we banter off each other really well, and we both play our respective roles very well. So it's been a pleasure, dude. Let's get these preview people switched off because they're getting the fuzzy screen now, so they're going to have to subscribe to the channel if they want the real deal.
Okay, well, that's the 10-minute preview of Babe Station finished.
And Babe Station is finished. Babe Station is finished. Right, you need to start calling now. Yeah, call. Go gyrate a wee bit for you.
Whoa! Bio.
Well, let's do that. Oh no, I don't know what I'm doing.